Hi, welcome to the stream. I'm doing my homework. I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking, just a lot of coding. Penny Full Cell 1, and I'm currently in the programming 1 class.
I do recommend saving it directly to the folder that you created. Ignore that. Just ignore. I have more hard drives now. I have a network attached storage now. So make a new folder for your projects, and then right-click Extract All. That'll bring up the dialog that says you want to extract this folder. You're going to say yes, and then it will open up that folder. So you will have a folder that looks like this. Inside of this folder, you're going to see more folders, but you're also going to see this file. If you don't, so make a new folder for your projects, put it in there, and then right-click Extract All. That'll bring up the dialog that says, do you want to extract to this folder? You're going to say yes, and then it'll open up that folder. So you will have a folder that looks like this. Inside of this folder, you're going to see more folders, but you're also going to see this file. If you don't have your file extension shown, it won't show that .sln, but it will still say the type of a Visual Studio solution, right? You must open your project using this file. This file opens up the entire project. If you go into this folder and open up an H file or a CPP file directly, that just opens up the one file. It doesn't open up the entire project, and the project needs all of the folders and files to run. So, you hit that solution file, and it'll open up Visual Studio. It may look like this when you open up Visual Studio. Most of the labs won't look like this, but the debugging exercise absolutely will. This does not mean that the application is broken. This means that it opened up the project, but it didn't open up a specific file in the project. When you create a new project, it by default opens up the default CPP file. Opening up a new project, open up an existing project doesn't do that. So you will need to open up your Solution Explorer, locate the studentwork.h, and open that if you don't see anything. Inside of that file, you're going to see a series of tests. These are basically worksheets. the test will look like this. There'll be a block quote, and the block quote, or the block comment will have instructions on how to complete the test. So this says, given an integer parameter number, return the given value multiplied by 4. An example input is 5, and an expected output is 20. So if you are given 5, what I expect to see out is 20. This is the parameter. We'll talk more about this in detail tomorrow. But this is the variable that will be assigned that randomized value. So a number is going to be equal to some random number between 0 and 10. So in this case, If number is equal to 5, I want 20 out. This value here, the return that follows the return, is the value that is given as a result of this method. So if I were to run this right now, I'm going to see output that looks like this.
I think I've already written this. Yeah, I already watched. I already did this. This is what I was trying to do. Yeah, turn this on so I can see. Nobody. Okay. I don't need to do this again. Okay, let's get started. I thought I just watched the video, but I actually didn't just watch it. Up to Silver Beach. I know this needs to be streamed to. I know it's going to be streamed to integer. Turn the incoming std string input into an integer. Std string input into an integer. The library I have string included. It does have include string. Test 3. Integer is the return type. Test 3 is the function. This is the parameter list. So you can't answer because of the instructions that it was given. For it to give me that information, it would think that it's cheating. But if I don't have that information, how am I supposed to know what I'm doing? If I don't know what I'm doing, how am I supposed to learn? How do you go from being ignorant to knowledgeable if the only thing you're allowed to do is make mistakes? Let's try it again. In the beginning, return type, the function will return integer. Test 3 is the function name. std string input is a parameter list. Here it has one parameter. Inside that list, std string is the parameter type. Okay. String to integer. What is the structure of string to So I'm asking what the structure for STOI is. std.stoi. So standard template directory, I guess. std. Oh, standard template library. They can't use STL because STL is already being used inside of C++ for something different. C++ already has its own library, so std expands on the current C++ library, and std is the names. They're using std because STL is already hard coded into the C++ library, but because it's already hard coded into the C++ library, std is required to expand on the limitations of the C++ library. Okay. std sti equals input. And this is the process, right? Because I know this is a color, I know this is a color. So I just do this and then I was asking, is this, if this is wrong, am I on the right track? You're very close, good. And here's what's off and how to fix it. STD, STI equals input tries to assign a function invalid. You need to call the function STD, STI input. Okay. Assign. The equal sign is an assignment sign. So the brackets. So this would be the call. And then I should return 0. Well, I need to return 4, but I'll return 0 for now. And then I'll build, and then run. Test 3 has failed. But at least it ran. It didn't give me it didn't crash. It did at least run. So far so good. STD .stoi equals input tries to assign a function invalid. You need to call the function std.stoi input. Return the definition is 0, not the converted value. Each statement needs a semicolon. What it should look like conceptually. Inside test 3, call the parser. Call the parser on the incoming string. Starts off on the localized integer. Return that integer. Integer parser value equals std.stoi input. Return parsed value. So do I return input? No, I should return test 3. Right. Is that right? No, it's not right. You fix the call, but you're declaring its result and allowing return 0. You need to return the value that std.stoi STI input produces two correct patterns. Pick one. Direct return. Return a diverse result from the function. Store, then return. Save it to a local integer. Then return that. Example showing a store, then return pattern with the final AI rules applied. Convert the incoming text to the integer and keep it in the local variable. Integer parsed underscore b equals std stui input. Return parse b. Integer parsed b. Integer value. Integer value. This is input. Return value. Okay, so this is the process. Now, when I first did it, because I had to fight with ChatGPT because the instructors was telling me what I should and shouldn't do, but they didn't explain what was expected. I wound up getting information from ChatGPT that I didn't want. That was outside the scope of the class. This has passed. Now, why do I deserve a 28%? For someone that doesn't know anything about programming, someone that is in the process of learning this for the first time and is making an effort to do everything that is necessary, why did I deserve to be given a 0? Because you instructed ChatGPT to not be helpful and not be useful. And in the process, I wound up doing shit outside of the scope of your class because I needed to get the answer to the question. And I didn't know how to ask the question or formulate the questions. So the whole process of using ChatGPT as a mentor and as a as a teacher, as a flat out teacher, was hindered and interfered with unnecessary human bias and deception and deceit. Because it's not hard to teach. There's nothing difficult about teaching. You just want to weed out as many people as possible. And if that's the way you want to structure your school, that's fine. But don't pretend like you're not doing that. Just be up and out. Just be upfront about it. We're just trying to get rid of as many people as we can by any means possible. And if you fall through the cracks on that, that's on you. Just say that shit out loud, because then I could just go to a different school. Let's finish my homework. So then now what we do is we're going to go back. It is very much possible to learn to use large language models to learn. You don't have to. The only reason why people try to cheat their way through life is because we were always given a time limit on how much we can do in the time frame that we're allowed to do it in, and we're constantly forced to not be successful. So under that pressure, people tend to wind up trying to save time through what people would consider cheating. But if you have the things you need to not have your time wasted, then you don't have to try to save time. You can just use your the time you have allotted to you effectively. So this should be the same exact structure for test four, if I'm not mistaken. So what I'm gonna do is copy this. First, keep ChatGPT up to speed because if you don't, it'll get confused. So and then just so you guys can hear it.
Yes, that's correct for test 3. It calls store input and returns the parsed in. No extra output or work. Exactly what the test wants. Make sure it includes string is present. You have it. Optional. Only if your course has covered this. You could return directly. Return stead store input to skip the temporary. You could take the parameter by const reference in test 3 const string and input to avoid a copy. Go ahead and build run. Nat 5 should yield 9 and 5. Then you're ready for test 4 with SDS style.
So I think all I have to do is this. Take this in value string to integer, and then down here int value string to double, because I'm trying to convert a double now. Right here it says string to double to convert string pattern into double. So string to double input integer value equals string to double. Yeah, string to double input return, and then return would be, but I'm gonna do value 1 so that this is not the same as this value up here. So I'm gonna return value 1. Double test for std string input integer value 1 std string input return value 1. So I feel like this should work, but that's the thing about codes. Like, you don't know. It feels like it should work, but it might not. So we go up here to build, rebuild solution, local window debugger, and it failed. Test 4 failed. So it seems like it should work. Seems like it should be done the same exact way. But as you can see, it did not work. Test 4 failed. So what we're gonna do, I need to reset it back to what it was. Do this, right? And then give ChatGPT test 4. I'm going to control Y to redo everything that I did. I know why it didn't work. I know why it didn't work. I don't even need ChatGPT. It didn't work because it's not an integer, it's a double. Look at me learning stuff. Look at this person not cheating, but actually doing his fucking homework. All of this effort to just get a fucking 0 and pass. And just so that you can see, not fucking retarded. Like, I'm so tired of constantly having to tell people that I'm not fucking stupid. There is a difference between being ignorant and not a fucking god and not all knowing, and not being retarded. You're not retarded just because you don't have the answer to all of the solutions in the world. Humans have the capacity to learn, grow, and evolve. I didn't even get a chance to ask ChatGPT. Didn't even get a chance to even ask it the questions that I needed to ask it. If this is an integer, and this is an integer, and this is a double, and this is an integer, and it fails, then it makes sense logically when you have enough understanding that the reason why this didn't work is because I'm trying to pass a string into a, I'm trying to pass an integer, a string into an integer when I should be trying to pass a string into a double. That means that this value should be set to double. And then I probably don't need this one because the double and the double and the integer type are not the same, so it shouldn't give me any conflicts. Because I made it value one so that they wouldn't conflict with each other, but that's probably not even necessary. So it probably should still work. Yep, it still works. It still passes. So yeah, so there it is. And then ChatGPT will probably tell me exactly what I just said. So let's see what ChatGPT has to say.
You've got it. Test 4 is the same pattern as test 3, just using double instead stod. Do this step by step inside test 4. 1. Make sure include string is present. It is. 2.
Oh,
In double test 4, std-string input, call the converter on input. 3. Store the result in a local double. 4. Return that local variable. 5. Build and run. The sample
so it would.
5543.859 should come back as 5543.85943. Common gotchas to avoid. Return. Returns a default initialized double, 0.0, not what you want. Don't use to stop here, that's float. Use to stod, that's double. No printing from this function, just return the converted value. Non-executable template, fill in your own names. You can see the code in our conversation history. If you write an attempt and it doesn't pass, paste your exact function body and the test message you're seeing. I'll point out the smallest fix.
So it would have probably hinted to, if I would have if I would have responded to what ChatGPT was saying, it would have probably hinted to the fact that I needed to change the integer type to a double type. But I had already looked at the code when I was control Y in the code. It kind of clicked intuitively. So let's just keep going. This is the easy part. Next week 3, I will definitely be struggling. Week 3, I will definitely be stupid. Like right now, I'm very much okay and comfortable with what I'm doing. But once it gets to object-oriented programming, depending on how much time I've got, depending on how busy my life is and whatever, and all the things I got going on, I'm gonna be like, it's gonna be a lot. So, float test 5, string input. It should just be. I'm gonna show ChatGPT what I did, just to give you guys an idea of what I be talking about. So this is the broken code, and I'm gonna ask it if this is right. Is this right? And then let's fix this. I was first doing this, all this stuff was like Greek. I didn't understand none of it. I was literally sitting here pulling my hair out. Like I really didn't understand what I was doing. And I knew that I needed this line, I just didn't understand what this line was. So this should be float value equals input. I'm just guessing. This is what I would assume, and then return would be value. And they're all different. I have a squiggly hair, so something, so I think this. I have a squiggly. String to, but a float isn't an integer, isn't a, so it'll be integer. Or float to float. Float to, it wouldn't be a string, std dot string. Does that fix it? I'm not sure what goes here. It's not going to be a string to integer. Float value equals integer string. I don't know. Float value. Maybe it's just float value input. Float value. I don't know. I don't have the answer. So I should be able to walk over to a human being and be like, hey, I'm confused on what I need to do right here. That person should give me the answer, but they won't. They're like, oh, we can't help you. You gotta figure it out on your own. Like, I can't figure it out. That's why I'm stuck. String to float. So it is a string to float. So it's a string to integer, a string to double, string to float. My confusion was a double and a float are the same. Okay, no. Okay, yes. So the way that they taught the class, they made an emphasis on the fact that a double and a float are the same. A float is just bigger. So I didn't think that, I wasn't considering the fact that the double value and a float value are different. My brain was just treating them as if the computer was going to just recognize them as the same thing. But yeah, that definitely does make sense. String to, so I'll ask ChatGPT, what is wrong? What is wrong? What am I doing wrong? For test 5, I already have the answer though. Float value, and then return value. Float value input, not float constructor for std.string. This doesn't exist. You need to parse the string using a standard converter. What is parse? What does parse mean? And the context is C++. Convert from one type to another type. Y std float value std dot string to float input parse text float return value, or simply return std dot stof input semicolon. Let's build the project. And it passes. Test 5 pass. Unassigned int test 6 std string input. String to unassigned function and return unassigned function. Unassigned integer value. So unassigned int, that's this. So we take this structure. Change float to unassigned integer. This is going to be value. And then string to this. This should go here. Input. Result is value. Unassigned long. So I just rinse and repeat. So I'm gonna take both of these. I don't think that I need to use ChatGPT for this part, so I'm gonna just go ahead and power through it. This should just be the same. So this would be, this should be unassigned long. Equals std dot. This will be st string to long, string to long, unassigned long value to string to long value, return value. There's 2 semicolons, get rid of those. Rebuild solution, and then Test 7, 6, 5, 4, and 3 all passed. And then test 8 follows the same methodology. And then this is going to be string. STD string. And then STD string, 2 string, STD 2 string. STD string value equals STD 2 string input, return value, build. And that's 8. 8 is passed, there's only 2 left. Explicit casting to convert the armor into a float. Here is and then test 9, explicit casting.
When programming our applications, it is often necessary for us to convert one data type as how to perform various types of conversion. The first conversion we'll talk about is implicit conversion, also known as implicit type conversion or coercion. In C++, an implicit conversion refers to the automatic conversion of one data type to another data type by the compiler without requiring any explicit conversion operator or casting syntax. It occurs when an expression of one data type is used in the context where a different data type is expected. Here, you can see an example of an implicit conversion. We have an integer typed variable, number 1, assigned with a literal integer value of 16. Then we take this value of 16 stored in our number 1 variable and assign it to a new number 2 variable, which is a long integer data type. Here we can perform an implicit conversion because the data type of int is smaller than the data type of long int. You can think of this as pouring water into a bucket. It's very, very simple to pour a 1 gallon bucket of water into a 5 gallon bucket of water because there's plenty of space for it. Here we can see a similar implicit conversion, this time using floating point numbers. We establish a float data type number 1 with a float data type value of 4.25. Then we assign the value of 4.25 stored in the number 1 variable to a number 2 variable, which is a double data type. Again, the double data type is larger than the float data type, and as a result, no explicit conversion is necessary. Here, you can see us adding the value 4.25f to our double data type. By adding the number f to the end of the literal floating point value number, we signify that this is a float data type value, even though we're assigning it to a double data type variable. The next type of conversion we'll talk about is an explicit conversion, also known as an explicit type conversion. Explicit conversions in C++ refer to the process of explicitly converting one data type into another data type using a cast operator. It allows you to convert a value of one type to another type in a controlled and intentional manner. Similar to the process of our implicit conversion, when you pour a 1 gallon bucket of water into a 5 gallon bucket of water, the process is typically simple. However, the process of pouring a 5 gallon bucket of water into a 1 gallon bucket of water is a little bit more complicated. You could say it requires a little bit of magic, and in order to perform magic, we will need to use a cast. Here, you can see a long integer typed variable, number 1, assigned a value of 16. Even though the value of 16 is well within the range of a normal integer-sized variable, by declaring this variable as a long integer data type, we reserved that full 8 bytes. As a result, in order to store the value of our number 1 variable into our integer typed number 2 variable, we'll need to perform what's known as a cast. You can
integer number 1 equals 16, integer number 2 equals integer number 1. I can't use. floats, and then double. Float and then double equals float. Convert the double into a float. So this should be the double. Let's just do it this way. Long number one. Okay. The double. Long float. Convert it double into a float. Float results equals float input. But how would it know? But if I use float and float, No, it's just one mismatch. You declare result as a double, but the function should produce a float by explicit casting. Fixing it like this: float test line double input. Oh, I think I understand. Based on my understanding. Conversion video. I'm gonna change those to value. Float. this is done. It's both of them? It wasn't supposed to be both of them. God dang it. Okay. It wasn't supposed to be both of them. I guess that makes sense though.